Hello and welcome to the Oddschecker podcast. This is the final Glorious Goodwood preview. We are previewing Saturday, day 5 of the Qatar Goodwood Festival. I'm your host, George Elek, and I'm joined by Andy Holding. As ever, Oddschecker's tipster, Andy Holding. And I imagine come Saturday, given both Goodwood and Galway, Andy, you're going to be a pretty tired man, but hopefully a bit of a richer man as well.
Yeah, we'll still have one more day to go at Galway, so it wouldn't quite be done for me just yet. But yeah, we've got quite a bit of water to go under the bridge as we're doing this on a Wednesday, we've got Thursday, Friday, and now we're going to preview Saturday. So hopefully I'm not looking to bail myself out of trouble by the time some of these selections are due to run come the weekend.
We're recording this just after about 12:30 on Wednesday, about 40 minutes before the first race of the second day. But as such, we are recording before the 48-hour final entries, the final decks. So a couple of these might come out. And remember, if you are going to back these before around about 11 o'clock on Thursday and the horse comes out, you do not get your money back. So just be wary of that. And I'll try and remind you where relevant as well. Before we get into the racing, just going to point you in the direction of the Oddschecker app for all the very, very best prices, for all the best bookie offers, the best free bets, and of course, including Andy, the very best tipsters across all sports. Make sure you download the app. If you're watching this video or you're listening to this podcast, it's because you clearly have an interest in horse racing, in betting, and in value. And if that is the case, you certainly should have it on your phone. On now to the first race of the day. It is the consolation race for the bigger Stewards Cup later on in the day, and we don't have any prices for this at the moment. So as we have been doing all week, Andy's just going to run the rule over the runners as they stand at the moment and flag any to keep an eye on when prices do open up, probably the day before around 5 o'clock. So Andy, which ones would you say at this early stage take your fancy?
Yeah, it's very right to point out the possibilities of a draw bias here. Obviously, it's the first race of the day on the straight track, and we don't know the draw, so it's very difficult to be dogmatic. But providing they do get drawn on the right side of the track, I do think there's a couple that ran well over the course and distance early on in the season that are worth considering, and that's Treacherous and Lamplighter. They finished first and second in a good handicap here back in June. The time figure was very good, and although Treacherous only just won that day by a nose, he's subsequently gone on to frank that form himself by winning at Haydock the other day. I thought he was very impressive again. He's just a horse that's on the up. Ed de Giles seems to have a canny knack of improving horses like this as the season goes on. So he's got to be on the shortlist, along with the Lamplighter, who ran an extraordinary race at Newmarket last time. I consider he completely fluffed the start. He got himself a long way back, but he came through and held every chance, only then to get beat by Turn to Rock. That was a really good effort. That was off the back of that run behind Treacherous, and he's got solid Goodwood form. I don't think he's actually run a bad race at Goodwood, to my knowledge. I think this is quite a substandard race. Normally, a consolation for this race would be, horses rated in the 90s. But you look at the bottom rated horse here, Ventura Express, as I'm speaking here, only rated 66. There's a lot of 70 rated handicappers, so it's their real big day in the sun. A lot of these, so horses like Treacherous and Lamplighter wouldn't normally be on the tip of your tongue when you're talking about a Stewards Cup consolation, but they do have claims in a what looks a fairly weakish renewal. So those would be my two at this very moment in stage against the field.
And just for those who will be keeping an eye on when the draw does come out, you mentioned a good draw. What kind of, are you looking for high numbers or low numbers here?
Well, in the last few years, I think middle to low has definitely come out on top, which is low numbers. The stand side tends to be churned up because they have lots and lots of races over the stand side during the week, and then when they sometimes shift the rail out as well on the far side, and that far side strip of ground, which is not used so much, or even down the middle is not used so much, that becomes fully effective. But we might get one or two other guides later on in the week before Saturday, so do keep an eye on that. But if I've got to nominate where you want your horses to be drawn at this very moment in time, I'd say middle to low.
Middle to low. So beware of backing Treacherous. It could be Treacherous if it's a high draw. And Andy's column, I'm sure, on Saturday morning will allude to the draw and what we have learnt during the week as well. So it could be worth just sitting tight, waiting to see Andy's write-up on Saturday morning. Now on to the second race of the day, the Summer Handicap. And this time I'm happy to say we do have prices. So Larfy is joint favourite alongside Cape Coast, both at 5-1. Future Investment and Ghost Watch both in at 8-1. All Right Sunshine, The Max We Can, Calling the Wind, Indianapolis, Mancini, all 12-1. I mean, there's so many still in this. It's looking very open indeed. Any that you'd be happy to chance at this early stage?
Well, I thought the Old Newton Cup was a very good race this season. It looked on paper beforehand a very competitive renewal. You got Larfy in there off the back of a good win on the time figures the time before. The Trader had run well in some good handicaps. Ranch Hand run well at Royal Ascot, if you remember. I think he finished 4th and 5th. Scarlet Dragon had won the mile 6 race at the Royal meeting. And Babo's Boy as well was very impressive when beating Harrovian and Alternative Fact at the track early on in the year. So it was chock full of horses that A, ran well at Ascot, B, brought to the table solid form. But he went the way of Deja, who handled the conditions better than any on the day. But I thought Larfy came out of the race with a huge amount of credit and arguably ground that on the day was probably plenty soft enough. But he stuck in there, hung in there tough. And like I say, if it wasn't for the winner, he would have run out a worthy winner. But already the race has worked out really well. Also finished 8th, Jamira went on to win at Ascot on Saturday, if you recall. And the Trader ran really well in the Rip and Bell Ringer a week ago when he finished 3rd in a decent race there. So small sample sizes, but that Old Newton Cup looks as though it's going to pan out as the time figure suggests. La Donda V, I think he's another horse that runs early on in the week. I think we might have covered him on the Friday.
Yeah.
So if he runs well, that's another feather in the cap to Larfy's form. But whichever way you strip it down, Larfy definitely brings the best form anyway into the table.
And Larfy currently jocked up as well by Ryan Moore. So you'd think should be, I'm not going to guarantee it because I've got bad track records with that on this podcast, but you'd think should be a guaranteed runner as well. So you should be safe, but beware. If you do take the 5-1 about Larfy with Bet Victor at the moment and Larfy does come out, you will not get your money back. But Larfy, the selection for Andy at 5-1. Any double figure prices that do you think maybe if they do turn up would be worth chancing?
I thought Mancini was quite good the other day at Newmarket. He's won at the track before. Ian Williams' horses seem to be in good nick as well. His handicappers are going well. Rishun was a good winner for that stable a few days ago. And Calling the Wind as well. He's another one. He beat Rudzinski last time at Ascot. I think he was 40-1 that day. But the pair of them pulled well clear. And Rudzinski ran on to run really well next time out at Newbury. So he's definitely one worth more than a second look as well if he runs.
Mancini and Calling the Wind there to look out for, as well as the favourable mention for Larfy. The Lilly Langtry is the next race in the day, the third race. And you have Nahaarr at 6-4 is favourite. Manuela de Vega for Rafe Beckett is 11-4. Cabaletta 11-2 alongside Snow. And then 14-1 Bar at the time of recording. What do you make of the match between those top two?
Well, Nahaarr, I think, sets a pretty high standard. She obviously won this race last year on fast ground, and it was that, unfortunately, the fast ground that she desires wasn't in her favour at Newmarket in her seasonal reappearance in the Princess of Wales Tattersall Stakes. It went the way of Dame Malliot. And it came a slog in the end, and that's not what she's about. She's a real easy mover that goes across the ground really nicely. And considering it was her first run for 270-odd days, she was bound to need the run as well. But when she won this race last year, she beat Manuela de Vega very comfortably. And that Manuela de Vega, in contrast, has won 2 races this season on soft ground. So with the weather continuing to dry out, which I think it will do as the week progresses, unless they have a huge deluge of some thunderstorms coming up from the south, I think this is very much going to play into the strengths of Nahaarr on fast ground in this kind of company. I think she's got the beating of this field.
At 6-4, you'd have to think so. Any others to take Nahaarr on with if you're not so keen on Manuela de Vega on slightly firmer ground than she's won on?
I quite like McAwee. She's not probably the classiest of horses, but I do like her as a horse. I think her run at Newbury last time out suggests she's still going on the improve. She's likely to run her race. And Dubious Affair as well. I think she's been very well handled by Charlie Fellows, moving her way through the ranks. She's only got a mark of 88, but she looks better than that. Again, they're just horses to talk about rather than actually put up as selections. But they're interesting runners all the same. But yeah, it's one of those races where I'd like to take on the favourite because I do think that it's vulnerable, but on this occasion, this one isn't.
Macawee 14-1, Dubious Affair 25-1 with Bet365 if you are looking for something at a slightly bigger price. But Andy's sticking firm with Nahaarr at the top of the market. We're rattling through these. We'll get on to the Stewards Cup now. And we have Nahaarr is 5-1 pretty much across the board. And his favourite, Meraas, is 10-1. Gulliver 12-1, Rawayat is 14-1. Plenty of those at 14-1. Lexington Dash, Summerhand, and then a few more down at 16-1. Plenty in there at the moment, as you'd expect. Plenty will run. Plenty will also not get in. And at this stage, we'll start with Nahaarr. I mean, it does look a fairly prohibitively short price for a 6-furlong race of this nature. Do you think it's justified?
Well, I think we get this situation pretty much every year, don't we? In these heritage handicaps. The Wokingham, particularly the Stewards Cup. The Stewards Cup seems to have a tradition. I think did Carden win it? I think a couple of years ago, and looking back in the day, I think the Baldings that won it when Frankie was on it. And the name escapes me. The Jeff Smith owned horse. It always seems to have like a group horse in waiting in it, and if ever there was one in that bracket, it's got to be Nahaarr. I'm massively impressed with the way this horse won last time out in a huge figure. Of course, had run well the time before at Ascot. Right up the stand rails, he just got picked off that day. But when he went to Newbury the day, he was devastating. Everything about his performance, smacked of a horse that's going to be out of handicap company sooner rather than later. I think they've had this racing on mind for quite a while, and looks about the right price really to me. But there are a couple in the race who I think at this stage are definitely worth considering at double figure odds.
Who are you looking at there?
Chairman of the board, one of them. Mick Shannon and the team seem to have got him back on track. He had a year in the wilderness when everything went wrong in pattern races and handicaps, but he was very impressive on his debut here, clocking a fast time as a 2-year-old. And I think it was that performance which made them think that they got perhaps a group performer further down the line. And as I said, he's rather fallen out of love with perhaps one or two of the guys in the yard that have flagged him up. But he's really come back to his best in the last few weeks. He was good at Windsor the other day. I still think he's on a feasible mark compared to how highly they rate him at home. And the other one to mention is Kimmy 5, who ran in this race last year, but got an absolutely horrific run through the stand side. Everywhere where Shane Kelly went on him last year, he just got no run, got blocked in his path. But he finished his race off very strongly. He's subsequently gone on to run so many good races since. Second at Haydock behind Barbill. And then he was also very unlucky in the Bunbury Cup the other day, game when he didn't get the clearest of runs. This horse is definitely capable of winning a big race sooner rather later. And it could well be the weekend. I've seen Kim Fallon's been booked, who's now got to be obviously up there with the big race Saturday jockeys that we see week in, week out, obviously with his Oxted victory giving him loads of confidence. And what price is he, George? Around about 14-1?
20-1, Kimmy 5.
20, wow.
Although I should say, yet again, Andy, we had it on the Friday podcast as well. Paddy Power have cut into 14s. So they are inside your head. But Kimmy 5, 20-1 as it stands at the moment. Just want to ask you about... Is
that 20-1 across the board, George?
That is 20-1 pretty much across the board, yeah. Yeah, a couple of firms 18. But 365...
I wish I could write my piece now and send that out because...
I'm sure if you speak to the lads, they'll let you put up a wee Saturday anti-post selection, maybe.
I might do, yeah. If I get a quickly chance to knock it out this afternoon. But
or we can call it an oddschecker podcast exclusive, and then when it goes
we can put that up now, yeah. For anyone listening now, that is an advanced anti-post tip, yeah. If you can get 5 places 20-1, or even 4 places 20-1,
4 places all 20s.
I'd rather put that up at 20-1 now. And at 4 places and perhaps 10 or 12-1 on Saturday at sort of 5 and 6 places.
What would be your staking? Point each way?
Be a point each way at that price, yeah.
Point each way at 20-1, Kimmy 5. You have it here exclusively. Just want to ask you about one other horse, Andy, because it was one of the most remarkable stories that went under the radar, I thought, at Royal Ascot with Hey Jonesy. It was a Kansas City shuffle. Everybody was looking at Bielsa for Kevin Ryan at the top end of the market. Hey Jonesy went off 18-1, which may sound like a big price, but I'm pretty sure Hey Jonesy traded in triple figures, and then about 10 minutes before the off was absolutely relatively smashed up before going on and winning just ahead of Summerhand. Summerhand then obviously went on to win next time out. The form figures for Hey Jonesy in its 4 runs before that win were 12th of 23, 16 of 24, 15 of 22, and 22 of 23. So Leyland did an absolute touch. Could you see Hey Jonesy taking on that form again?
Well, Haynes Jonesy had run really well, I think, in the Commonwealth Cup, hadn't he? A few years ago. And he'd always got that big run in him. Obviously, it was a Group 1, and he'd slipped down in the weights. And I think it was a classic case of those insiders knowing that the horse was going to lead. You often get a situation where the front runner trades shorter and running. So perhaps those that are pot shotting at a big price knew that those are the tactics and thought, well, I'll back it at 100. I can get out of it at 20. And it was just a case of the odds shortening when everyone become aware what was going to happen. But of course, lo and behold, he went and made all and stayed in front. And of course, that was very much a dagger through the heart for me because I'd backed Summergan, who I thought had got up near side. I mean, Summergan, we'll get onto him, not wanting to walk away from the Haynes Jonesy talk. But I mean, he's been an amazing horse, hasn't he, in recent times, Summergan. He's always been there or thereabouts. Unfortunately, he's worked himself up now to a mark of 108 without winning one of them. He's been placed in, that Rip and Raid, this Great St Wilfrid, the Woking, the Stewards Cup. He's literally hasn't missed every big gig. He's danced every dance for the last 2 years, and we're still out without winning. Whether his time will come now, trying to give weight away to Nahaarr, he's open to question. But I think he'll run his race. He's likely to be in the first 3 or 4 again.
Summerhan top weight, as you say, is I think 14 to 1. I'll just double check that now. 14 to 1, and Hey Jonesy is 16 to 1. So there you have those two. I guess probably the tactics for Hey Jonesy might be the same. So you could try that tactic yourself of getting on and then closing out if that's the way you like to play. On now to the final race that we'll be able to cover in detail because we have the prices, and that is the Qatar Handicap, where Society Lion is the current 7-2 favourite ahead of Mr. Snowden, who is 6-1 alongside Cold Front. Bashir is 7-1, 10-1 Bar. Again, plenty left in there at this current stage, Andy. Do you think that the market has it right as it stands?
Possibly, yeah. I mean, Society Line was a withdrawal, as we speak today on the Wednesday, largely due to perhaps the draw. I think he was drawn 16-16, wasn't he? Or right out in the wing. I don't. Put it this way, if there's something wrong with him, it's going to be one of them greatest recoveries of all time, isn't it, to get him back to the gig on Saturday? So if he doesn't make it, and if there is something wrong, we know that 3-1 looks plenty short enough. I'm a massive fan of Cold Front, the William Haggas horse. It took him a while to get off the mark, but he did so as expected in devastating fashion at Haydock the other day. He made all the running pretty much, and he clocked a very fast time in doing so. But his runs prior to that were very unlucky. He was unlucky at Kempton behind Meraas, who subsequently gone on to frank the form. Yarmouth, he just got caught out with the run of the race that day. But I do think this again, and we're talking about horses who could be group horses in the waiting. He's another one who could easily fall into that bracket. But at least, unlike one or two of the Haggas horses we mentioned earlier on in the pod, he's still at the kind of rating that allows him to run in a race like this. If he bags a good draw on the day, then I'll be all over Cold Front.
Could be a very good couple of days, Andy, for William Haggas if this all comes true, because he put up a few of those both on this one and also on Friday's pod as well. So if you listen to this before Friday, make sure you get that one because a few good tips, good words for Haggas horses. Any others? Any sleepers down the field at kind of bigger prices?
Not really, no. Mr. Snowden, he's also another horse that didn't run on the Wednesday as we speak. He was unlucky last time out, being drawn on the wrong side of the track at Yarmouth. I think 7 furlongs will suit him. He's another one to mention.
There you go, Mr. Snowden, 6-1 alongside Cold Front there. We'll move on to the last 2 races of the day. Sadly, no prices at the moment, but we will just flag up any that Andy is keeping an eye on. We have the Maiden, the 440. A pretty long list at the moment, but any on your short list?
A horse of John Quinn's called Titan Rock, I thought ran quite well on debut. Runs in the colours that is often well represented in races like this. The Safe Voyage owners think he'll go quite well there. And in the final race, where are we? George Scott has inherited a horse called Exec Chef off Jim Boyle. Apparently been working quite well at home and has got some form around sort of places like this, Epsom, and I think he's run at Goodwood before, but he's potentially quite well handicapped. And of course, he finished 4th behind Montatham early on in the season in that Newmarket race, which is working out incredibly well. He ran well at Sandown next time out. Thor Hammer Hampson's been booked. Good apprentice. So it's apprentice handicap. So you're looking for the best apprentice, and he's riding as well as any at the moment. So he's an interesting jockey book in there for a horse having his first run for George Scott, exec chef, worth keeping an eye on in the last.
First run for a new trainer in a handicap at a big meeting.
There you go.
I am sold, Andy. I'm sold. Thank you very much, Andy, as ever, for joining us.
No
Just
problem.
before you go, if what is your nap for the day? I know it's pretty early to be talking of this stuff when we don't know exactly who's running, but if you had to have a bet as it stands, who would you be backing?
Well, of the short ones we've talked about, obviously Nahaarr, but the prices I've flagged it up already. Kimmy 5 in the Stewards Cup, 20-1. Kimmy 5 is the one, I think.
Kimmy 5, the nap for Andy. Make sure you download the oddschecker app immediately if you've enjoyed this video or this podcast. You can find Andy's tips there every day alongside other tipsters such as Daryl Carter and his daily nap, and across all other sports as well. You also get the best prices, the best bookie offers, the best free bets, and all the best tips as well. Fingers crossed we've flagged up some winners for you on the Saturday. We've recorded a pod like this for every single day of the festival, so make sure if it's not too late, you get on those either on YouTube or all good podcast platforms. Fingers crossed, as I say, for some winners from Andy there. Most importantly, though, make sure you please do gamble responsibly.